What's up, ladies and gents, and welcome back to Age of Empires Definitive Edition. We are back with something a little bit different today, and as was requested by a viewer, I will give you a little bit of an introduction into hotkeys. And as you can probably tell by the title of the video, this is meant for absolute beginner players, so players that just bought the game and we're not really interested in investing endless amounts of time in learning the ins and outs of a game, and I just want to casually play a little bit. And maybe they are asking themselves, well, yes, I do only want to casually play Age of Empires here and there, but I would still like to improve my performance. Are there any easy ways you can do that? And one of the ways to do that is to use the most basic of hotkeys the game has to offer. And I will give you a quick overview of the ones that you really should use and make use of. Now, the first thing you should use is the hotkey for your town center. Now, the town center, obviously here, first building that you start with, and right at the start of the game, obviously what you want to do is jump to the town center, and as you can see, I didn't click it, I jumped to it by using the hotkey, and the default hotkey for that is H, which brings you directly to the town center, but you can obviously set a hotkey of your liking to reach the town center. Now, the hotkey that I am using is one of my extra mouse buttons, because those are easy and fast to reach, and if you own a mouse with extra buttons, I do recommend setting one of them for the town center, because pressing H, maybe you misclick on the keyboard or anything. I just think it's easier and faster to use an extra mouse button, but again, you can set it to H, or you can change the hotkey to a key you prefer, but again, standard hotkey is H. Learn the hotkey for the town center, make sure you know how to press it, and this is important throughout the game, not only in the beginning, obviously that's the first thing you want to do, but not only in the beginning this is important, but throughout the game you want to come back to the town center a lot, because you want to keep producing villagers, and you often just want to jump back to the base, and well, usually the town center is inside your base, so that takes you back rather quickly. The next thing you should learn is the villager hotkey. We'll just open this, and here you can see the default is Q. Now, I will say one thing up front, I use the European hotkeys, or for the European, and in my case German keyboard. Obviously the American keyboard has a different layout, so if you're an American viewer there might be some different keys that you have, but we will get to that later. I have Q here as my hotkey, and obviously that's another hotkey that you should memorize, because it really helps with the start of the game and throughout the game. If you can just, for example, you are here, you are commanding your army to attack this enemy, and you want to jump back and keep the economy building up. So you jump back and build a new villager without clicking anything, and then you can go back to your army and try to kill this opponent. The next thing, as you can see, we are housed. What you want to do is you want to take one of your villagers, for example this one, and you want to build a house. Now the house also has Q, so what you want to learn is you take that villager and you build a house. These are the most basic hotkeys. So for the start of the game, what you can do is jump to it, build a house. This is a lot quicker than clicking it, clicking it, clicking it, clicking it, clicking it. So you can save a lot of time right at the start of the game with only these very basic hotkeys. We have only had H for town center, and Q to build a villager, and Q again to build a house. Now, as you have probably already seen, the top left corner has Q as the hotkey, and If you look at your keyboard, Q is at the top left corner of your key layout. And the reason for that is, if we follow along here, the hotkeys follow the same layout as your keyboard. So if you kind of memorize the layout here, you can easily also memorize the hotkeys. For example, as you can see here, this is the fourth, and the fourth letter here on the keyboard is R, so we utilize that, and the building next to it is obviously the granary, which we don't want to build here, but here. So this just makes it a lot quicker. We can build another house, and that's just an easy way of doing it. Now, another important hotkey, and another one that I have set to my extra mouse button, because it does make sense doing it that way in my opinion, is if you're here, let's say attacking the enemy base again, and you can see up here, hey, where there is an idle villager. Now we can obviously click up here, but you can also use the hotkey, and there you are. You build something again and progress. Now another very important hotkey that I would urge you to remember is some of these military buildings that you are going to want to build, and these resource buildings that you are going to build at the start of the game. Obviously, again, they are laid out as the layout of your keyboard, so they're really not that hard to learn. Another one that is very frequently used is here F for the farms, which is kind of easy to memorize, F for farm. So we can jump here and build a farm with them. Very simple as a beginner hotkey that I think everyone can use. It really doesn't require any tremendous amount of practice. Especially this where you're near the enemy and you just jump back home and build a villager. I think that's the most important combination, as well as jumping to an idle villager instead of having to click up here. I think those are really the most useful hotkeys that you can use, and we will see each other in a bit in a more advanced stage of this game, where I will show you a few more interesting hotkeys, and until then. So here we are a little bit later in the game. We now have a couple of units here, and you're probably asking yourself, can I use any hotkeys to improve the performance of my army, to improve my handling of units? And one thing you can do, and which is highly recommended, is to use the number hotkeys. What does that mean? Well, you can give hotkeys to certain groups of units, and when you press the number, it takes you to that group of units. Now, for example, this is my army. I press Ctrl at 1, and well, now they all have number 1. So if I'm over here and I want to jump back, I double press 1 and it takes me back here. Pressing once selects them, double pressing the number puts you into this position. Also, which is nice, is it shows your control groups here, and pressing on it also takes you right there, if that is your thing. Obviously pressing is faster. Now, this is obviously not ideal. What you want to do is, you want to group units that you want to use as a group. Now, you don't want to attack with all things at once, just charge in. What you instead want to do is, for example, you take your horses, you give them number 1. Charge forward with them. But you want to control your stone throwers differently, so you give them a number 2. What that means is you can press number 1 and you can, for example, send them here and control the number 2 units separately from them. Because usually your priority with these horses is a different one than your priority with the stone throwers. So you can switch back and forth and use the units as you like. Another unit that I like to have in a separate hotkey is priests. So, you know, you can use that here, and have the priests walking around as well. What you don't want to do is needlessly spread out the groups, so you have 9 or 10 of these groups that really serve no purpose. So just try to see which groups of units have their own purpose, which do I want to use separately, and then group them together and just send them wherever you would like to. Obviously this also makes sense if you have a flank attack. So for example, take these guys, give them number 2 here. So you send them here and you send them down there. So you can jump back and forth between these groups and do an efficient flank attack. So this is almost it for the most basic of hotkeys, but another thing I want to show you is later in the game you often will have multiple town centers. Now, as we have already learned, pressing the town center key takes you to the town center. Then you can press the villager hotkey and it will produce villagers. Now what you can also do is press the town center hotkey multiple times and it cycles through all of your town centers. So for example, you produce one here, and one here. That also makes it easier to jump through different bases. If you have, for example, one here and one here and one here, and you don't just want to click around here, you can jump through your town centers like that. This works with every building. For example, if you press Ctrl and S, it takes you to the storage pits. That is just an example of what you can use. So we are interrupted here. And the storage pits are obviously important for the upgrades. Obviously we have everything done here, but you can also, for example, you want to grab 2 upgrades. You can go to a storage pit, grab one, go to another storage pit, grab another one. That also increases or decreases the time you need for the upgrades, because when you do them simultaneously. One thing for the town centers is, when you press the key, it always takes you to the one that you build the last, so the newest one. Then the next, until you reach your original one. The same is true for every other building. So for example, pressing the hotkey for the storage pits takes us to the last one we built, then the one before, and to our original one. This works that way in like with every building. So that's something to keep in mind. And the last thing I'm going to show you is you can also give numbers to buildings. So for example, you don't want to jump back to the stables, but instead you want to take your military buildings and give them, I don't know, number 4. And while you're on the front, you can use that to adjust the gather points to where you need them for all your military buildings. Or what you can also do is, for example, give the stables number 4, and then you're here, you press number 4, you press the hotkey for the unit, and then it queues the units. You don't even need to go back to the stables, you can just do that while you fight here. And you can obviously also set the gather points here, so that's another useful hotkey that you can use. As you can see, I'm not really playing here, I'm just trying to stay alive while I explain these things to you. And one last thing before we head off is, when you have something even without a hotkey selected, so for example this priest, and you're, I don't know, God knows where, you can press spacebar and it takes you to whatever you have selected. That's maybe another useful thing. So this is it for now. Those are the most basic hotkeys that you can learn without too much effort, I think. These shouldn't be too difficult, and they should enhance your gameplay if you are interested in just learning the most basic hotkeys to just gain a little bit of a speed advantage, to gain a little bit of extra time, and I think that should be able to enhance your gameplay, especially if you are a beginner and you would just like to improve a little bit, and you really don't know where to start. I think this is a good starting point for it. I hope you can do this, and we will see each other with another video soon, I hope. Until then, farewell.